Hi everyone, I'm the Limitless Librarian and welcome to my February Reading Wrap-Up. I believe we have 14 books read this month, and as per usual procedure, I'll be ranking them from worst to best. There wasn't anything particularly bad I read this month, but I don't think it was as strong as January was. But even so, there were still some pretty good reads in here. So without further ado, number 14 is Conference-ville by Frank Moorhouse. And this is a short little book about a guy who attends a scholarly conference in Melbourne. He presents there and he's just observing the people there and the relationships between them over the couple of days of this conference. And this book, it was fine. I liked the writing, I enjoyed the writing, but it was a bit confusing for me because I think it's set a bit before my time. It's set in the wake of the end of the Gulf Whitlam government, and that was like 1970s, I believe. So yeah, a bit before my time, so a lot of the political references and commentary just kind of went over my head. But still, not a bad book. This is just a me problem of me being too young, I think. Or rather, just being born too late to be able to really appreciate it. Number 13 is The Vampire by John William Polidori. This is considered to be the first modern vampire story. It was written in the early 19th century, well before Dracula was written. I found out about the story through a vampire book I read late last year, going through like the history of literary vampires. And so it mentioned this book as the start of vampire fiction, or at least modern vampire fiction. It's a short story. The actual story itself is only like 40 pages long, and in this book it contains sort of the background of why it was written, which in a way is a bit more interesting than the story itself. The story itself just kind of ends. Like you know going in who the vampire is, because that's the whole point of the story. And the problem is, like at the end of the story, these people go to rescue this lady who they finally realised is in the clutches of a vampire, but it doesn't describe what happened. Literally the last sentence is just, Lord Ruffin had disappeared and Aubrey's sister had glutted the thirst of a vampire. That's literally the end of the story. It doesn't tell you, it doesn't describe the scene that they came upon, the anguish and tension in the people as they wonder if they'll be too late. Like it just kind of ends. So there's all this build up and tension for like no payoff. I might do a video on this story though, because of its historical significance and the story background behind it, involving Lord Byron and Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, and yeah, just the history of how the story came to be. But the story itself was kind of underwhelming given its significance. Number 12 is Into the Mist by William Meikle. This is 3 Scottish stories. I found out about this author through someone in Criminoli's Discord server promoting this author, trying to get a Scottish week thing going, which never really happened, but I thought the author and the work sounded interesting, so I decided to try one of his little novels. This is the one that I chose just to dip my toes into his work, and I thought they were pretty good. I liked the writing and the atmosphere. However, the mythological references and stuff kind of went over my head a little bit. So I would have liked it if at the end of each story there was a little section sort of explaining the mythological background of the story, for those of us who are not as familiar with Scottish mythology and folklore. Because that's really interesting to me. That's why I picked this one up. But I just didn't have the knowledge required to truly appreciate the creatures and references in these stories. So 2 of them were more mythological. The third one dealt with the play Macbeth by Shakespeare. And again, just the ending of that just had this one reference. Like the last word of the last story is Fotheringay. And I have not read Macbeth, so I do not know if there is any significance to that, but just in the context of the story, that is apparently significant. So if anyone here has read Macbeth and knows what Fotheringay is in the context, please let me know in the comments below. But I definitely want to check out more of William Meikle's work. I just would like a bit more background and mythological context and historical context on what the things that inspired these stories. Number 11 is Psyduck Ducks Out. This is an adaptation of some Pokemon anime episodes. Specifically, it's a compilation of stories about Misty's Psyduck. And this is written by a different author to the other Pokemon novels I've read. The other ones were written by Tracy West. This is written by an author called Jennifer Johnson, and it was actually better than the other ones I have read. The descriptions were better, which is something that I criticised in one that I read in January. So yeah, I enjoyed this. It was fun to revisit the story of Misty and Psyduck, who is a fan favourite character among the first season of the anime, and it was surprisingly emotional given how Psyduck is just generally used for comic relief in the anime. So I think we're up to number 10, and that is The Lost Stories collection by Michael Scott. This is a collection of prequel novellas to the Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel series, and this was kind of a mixed bag. Some of them weren't very fun to read. The first one was kind of a drag. I did sort of struggle through it a little bit. I did sort of struggle through this book a little bit. I liked Machiavelli's one. I liked Billy the Kid's one, although I had some mixed feelings on the villainization of Cuchulainn. And also just the writing style. Just maybe I've aged out of it because this is a YA series, and maybe I've just aged out of Michael Scott's writing style, but his writing didn't feel very deep. And the series is generally also very action-packed, and so the novellas rather, in this collection kind of did feel a little bit formulaic as you got used to how the story was going to be structured. And so yeah, the writing was more just telling the action, not as much describing or showing or character development, I guess. So yeah, maybe I'm just a bit old for his writing, but I definitely read YA that's aged better than this as an adult reading it. So maybe that's why as well. So yeah, if you're a fan of the Nicholas Flamel series, which I am, I read it and I liked it. Yeah, check this out, I guess. But it's also like not mandatory reading for the series. And be prepared that it's going to be a bit of a mixed bag, like I said. Number 9 is Centuries of Stories, which is an anthology of short stories edited by Wendy Cooling, but written by a bunch of different authors. This is a set of historical stories, one written in each of 1 to 20 centuries. And like a lot of short story collections, this one was also a bit of a mixed bag. There were a couple of ones I really liked, like I think it was Elred's Feet, which was about a monk whose monastery got raided by like Vikings. I liked that one. And there was also a very impactful, powerful one about some Black American slaves, a mother and daughter, escaping to freedom. That was a very powerful one. But there were also a couple of really iffy ones here. There was this stupid YA angel story about like an angel, like a girl who died and became an angel today and then went back in time to rescue a saint or something. And then she was just so dumb and stupid. I have no idea what that one was doing in there, what that author was thinking. But yeah, on the whole, it was a decent collection. I enjoyed some of the stories there. Like I said, Elrod's Feet and the slave one were really memorable to me. And I think this was just a really cool idea in general. One story for each of these centuries, going through different time periods. There was also one about a character who met Jesus, and that was also another really good story in this collection. Yeah, that was that one. And that one was part of my Dimmicks reading challenge, by the way, for the prompt about a book from another time or culture. So yeah, that was for Dimmick's Reading Challenge. Number 8 is the 169 Story Treehouse by Andy Griffiths. This is the 13th and final book in his 13-story Treehouse series, and I have a signed copy, so that was pretty neat. I love the shiny green cover, and also the fact that it actually has, you can see all of the other 13-story Treehouse books on the cover. That's pretty cool, because this being the send-off to the series, like the cover makes it feel like a bit of a love letter to the whole series. I just wish the story itself had followed through. It wasn't bad, the story of this one. In this one, Andy, Terry and Jill end up with these crazy evil mirror clones of themselves, and they're also forced to try to go to school against their will, but I wish it had felt more like a love letter and a true send-off, a true farewell to the series. But it wasn't bad, and it was definitely a good and enjoyable story, and I liked the mirror clones. But yeah, just as the final book in such a long-standing series, the first book of this series came out when I was 11. The last book came out last year when I was 24. So for a series that was going on for that long, I would have liked a bit more of a send-off. And number 7 is the 156 Story Treehouse by Andy Griffiths. This is book 12 in the 13-story Treehouse series. And in this one, it's Christmas at the treehouse, and Santa accidentally crashes his sleigh into the treehouse and chaos ensues. So I think this was a more fun story than the 169 Story Treehouse. And it was definitely really fun and a really good Treehouse entry. Number 6 is Trans Wizard Harriet Porber and the Bad Boy Parasaurolophus by Chuck Tingle. And this one I have filmed a review of, so that will be up next week. But this is a parody of Harry Potter throwing shade on J.K. Rowling by Chuck Tingle, who is a pretty notorious sort of weird erotica author who likes dinosaurs and sentient objects, mainly, both of which feature in this chaotic book. And in spite of what the cover may lead you to believe, this is actually not only readable, but actually surprisingly good. It's also very self-aware, there's lots of fourth wall breaking in it. So it's also just a very fun, silly story. You don't take it seriously, but even for something that you go in knowing you're not supposed to take it seriously, it's actually kind of surprisingly good. And you actually do get surprisingly invested in the characters. So there you go. Number 5 is Infinite Powers by Stephen Strogatz. This is a maths book going through the history and development of calculus, from Archimedes way back in ancient Greece to modern day. I wish I could rank this higher because I really liked the writing style. Some of the words and phrasing in here was just gorgeous. However, I do wish there was, funnily enough, a bit more history and a bit less maths, because there were just whole chapters dedicated to explaining calculus and how it works, which I already knew. And I went into this book wanting to read about the history and development of calculus. That's what I was more interested in, because as I said, I know how differential and integral calculus works, and I get that this is perhaps a bit for the everyman who has heard of calculus and doesn't know what it is. But at the same time, I don't know why the average person would choose to pick up a calculus book, quite frankly. It pains me very much to say that. It feels almost a betrayal, and it hurts my soul. But the fact is that unless you're kind of really already into STEM to some degree, this is probably not going to be on your radar. So I feel like the people who are going to read this book already know how calculus works and don't need this whole step-by-step walkthrough of it. And the people that this was written with in mind probably aren't going to be interested in the history of a field of maths that they don't know about. So I think Stephen Strogatz should have gone all the way in with the target audience of this book. Either aim this at the maths people who are already familiar with it and go in depth with all the maths that they know and expand on the minutiae of calculus and its development further, or lean all the way to the everyman, spelling out calculus for him and what it is and what it's used for. I think this book does not know what its target audience is. That being said, I quite enjoyed it. I definitely learned some more cool stuff about the history of calculus, including about the role that Descartes and Fermat had in it, and also how much of a butthead Descartes was. That was kind of surprising, honestly. He was not nice to Fermat. He really looked down on Pierre de Fermat because Fermat was basically a hobbyist, not an academic mathematician. Maths was his hobby, and yet he was on par with actual professional mathematicians. And so Descartes was just clearly a bit miffed by that. A little understandably, but still didn't warrant his attitude. So yeah, don't meet your heroes, I guess. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but like I said, I would have preferred a bit more history and a bit less maths because I didn't need to have the maths explained to me personally. I read this book for the history because I already knew about the maths. History of maths is something I do find really interesting though, so I would love to know more about it. Number 4 is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. And I've also filmed a review of this one, and I'll pop that up next week also. This book, you've probably heard of it. Maybe you even read it in school, studied it in school. I did not, and I am glad of the fact, because that probably would have hindered my ability to enjoy it. And I definitely did enjoy it. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about a group of schoolboys from like 6 to 12 years old who get stranded on this deserted island after their plane crashes on it, and they have to figure out how to survive and how to just function as a group on the island. And I enjoyed the writing of it and the themes explored, the way it explored these themes. And boy, did this book age well. It's 70 years old this year, but it really did not feel like it. This felt like early Stephen King, so like 1970s, 80s perhaps. So yeah, it definitely does not feel that old. Like if this book were a human being, it would be a baby boomer. It does not feel like that. No disrespect to any baby boomers watching this, but yeah, this book aged quite well, I think. And I just enjoyed the writing and the atmosphere and the build-up of the tension and the exploration of these characters and the way they interact with each other, and the way that situations that would not really be a big deal under normal circumstances have actual further repercussions in this situation, this survival situation that they find themselves in. So please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my review of this and Harriet Porber as well, because those have already been filmed and those will be out next week. Number 3 is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. This one I have reviewed and I've already posted that video up, so link in the description if you would like to hear more about what this book is about and what I thought of it. This was my first foray into Murakami's work, and I went into it expecting a 1984 retelling and also expecting it to be a bit weird. On the first front, I was perhaps oversold because it really did not have much of a connection to 1984. But on the second front, I was definitely not prepared for just how weird this book is. This is definitely, I will say, an 18 plus book, and there are definitely some things that will make people uncomfortable in it. But what causes this book to be ranked so high on this wrap-up is the writing style. Also, by the way, I should mention this book is the longest book that I've ever read. It is 1,300 pages, or in fact, I think it's 1,320, which is the longest book I've ever read. Technically, it's an entire trilogy in one volume, but nobody really considers the books separately, I don't think. So this book is about two characters, Almame and Tengo, and at first they seem to have separate lives, separate stories. They're both engaging in different risky endeavours. Almame is essentially a hitman for men who have abused women, and Tengo is ghostwriting a novel with the hope of winning this literary prize for this young girl who originally wrote the story, and there would be a scandal if he was found out. And eventually the two lives and stories become intertwined when they get involved with this cult, and this weird sort of alternate reality sort of situation happens. It's very strange. It's a bit magical realism. There are a lot of weird things in it. But the writing style was enjoyable. I really like Haruki Murakami's writing, clearly, so I definitely want to read more of his work. Number 2 is A Stroke of the Pen by Terry Pratchett. This is a collection of short stories that were discovered that Terry Pratchett wrote. Many of them under a pseudonym in obscure magazine columns, and they were just really charming. Like, you can't really go wrong with Terry Pratchett's writing. Some of them there was a weird number of Christmas themed stories in here. I still enjoyed them even though it's not Christmas time anymore. There are a bunch of stories in this strange town named Blackberry. There's a story about a quest to kill a dragon that I really enjoyed. See, I like that one. I like the one where Santa went on strike. But I don't think there was anything bad in here. Like, unlike most short story collections, this one is actually pretty consistent. It was just consistently fun and charming, and I didn't dislike any of the stories in it. So yeah, you really can't go wrong with Terry Pratchett. Also, does anybody else have this particular edition with the white dust jacket? Because I've seen this book a bunch on BookTube, and everyone has a black dust jacket, and this is the only time I have seen this edition with the white jacket when I bought it. So that's kind of random. And number 1, the best book I read in February was The Last Devil to Die by Richard Osman. This is the 4th book in the Thursday Murder Club series, and I've posted a review of the series and also another video reacting to a specific scene in this book. This is by far the best book so far in the Thursday Murder Club series. And if you don't know what the series is, it's about 4 old people in this retirement village who get together every week to discuss unsolved murders. And so when all these new murders start happening, they decide to get involved and try and solve them. This book was unexpectedly emotional. The series had gone to emotional moments here and there, but this one really ramped that up and tugged at your heartstrings and just broke my heart a bit. So if you want to know about that, watch my reaction video to that scene in that book. Again, link in the description. Just, you can't go wrong with the Thursday Murder Club series. The humour is lovely, the characters are really fun and enjoyable, and yeah, this one in particular is just really, really emotional. So I loved it. This was also a Dimmicks Reading Challenge prompt for the TBR Hangover, which is a book I didn't quite get to last year. So thank you for watching. That was everything that I read in February. Have you read any of these books? If so, tell me what you thought of them in the comments below. And please like and subscribe for more book reviews. As I said, I've already filmed Lord of the Flies and Harriet Porber reviews, and I might do a discussion on Polydori's Vampire, so please subscribe so you don't miss those. So with that out of the way, as always, do lots of maths, read lots of books, and I'm sure you'll have a lovely day.